It's weird for me actually being on the other side of this.
Yeah. I bet it is.
It's like, it's so well. Might be the first time, so bear with me.
Okay.
So my name is Emma Twyford, and I am 1/3 of the Climb and Flow psychology team. And today I'm going to be interviewing Kevin Roet, who probably is the main instigator of setting up Climb and Flow. He's written a book called Climbing Psychology, and today we're going to delve a little bit into his mind and how he got into climbing and why psychology. So, Kevin.
Yes, Emma.
When did you start climbing?
When did I start climbing? My first climbing experience was when I was 12 years old, and my parents had sent me away to an activities week. Obviously, they like me and my brother were too much, so they just kind of sent us off for a week. And I remember climbing this mobile tower. So I remember like climbing it and getting to the top and finding it really tough, really hard. And I don't remember whether it was physically or mentally. And then I remember getting encouragement from, I guess, the instructor holding the rope, and got to the top. And that feeling of like getting to the top, that kind of stuck with me. And then I didn't really climb after that until I was 18. And then I started getting into sport climbing and trad climbing. So I was born in Belgium and then moved to the UK. So started to kind of climb more when I got to the UK.
How old were you when you moved to the UK?
15. So born and bred in Belgium, and then moved to the UK when I was 15. Yeah.
And where did you move to?
Moved to a place called Cirencester. So we lived in Belgium in a suburb of Antwerp, and then moved to Cirencester, which there's not really much climbing there apart from really cool climbing gym at the time, which was the Warehouse Climbing Centre.
Yeah.
which you know. And that recently closed, and the guys have moved to a new centre. Yeah.
One of the guys I sat with, he sat there just before their opening on the bouldering. And so, was it through university or clubs, or like just through your own volition that you started climbing again when you were 18?
Yeah, so I started climbing, and that was through my own, I guess, my own motivation. I was quite into skateboarding and snowboarding and all that stuff, and kind of got into climbing, and didn't do any courses. I went out with, I think I first started teaching friends at the climbing centre because I wanted people to belay me. And I kind of went through a whole series of friends, and some friends stuck with it and others kind of disappeared, and then went into trad climbing in my late teens, early 20s, and just learned as I went along, and obviously made a lot of mistakes. But I'm still
that's
here.
Inevitable. Like you always make mistakes.
I know, but it's like now as an instructor, I look back and I look at some of the stuff that I did and think, oh my God, what was I doing?
What was the worst mistake you ever made?
Worst mistake. Like I remember trad climbing, and like I didn't really know how to place gear, and I just went out and just put gear in what I thought was okay, but like wasn't okay. Probably couldn't have put any weight on it at all. And even like building anchors, right? You build anchors and it'd be like two pieces, I don't know how I equalized it, and it probably wasn't redundant. And if I actually put any weight on it, it probably meant like sudden death. And I see it now, like when people come on courses and you teach them like how to build anchors, you want people to sit and weight the anchor to make sure that there's no shock loading on it. I never did that. I was always leaning. I was too scared to lean back on it.
That probably tells you a lot about it.
Yeah.
Did you learn from it as you went along?
Did I learn from it? I guess I did. There was a lot of mistakes, and then I read some books, and then learned from books, and I saw other people doing stuff, and I thought, oh, that looks cool, and then try and figure out why they did it, and then I guess try and learn. Learn by seeing and doing and not dying.
I think that's like one of the most useful things really, is to like learn from other experienced people and see what they're doing and being like, oh, I was doing that wrong. Okay.
Yes. But like looking back now, I wish that I'd gone on climbing courses and people would actually taught me things well. I did go on it. I did pay for a climbing course once, and I think it was 1 day course. And I'm not going to name names. The instructor just went climbing for himself. Didn't really learn anything. He just went climbing for himself, and I followed. And I was like, "Yeah, this is great. I'm climbing, but I'm not sure what I'm learning."
Yeah, I guess. Not the ideal situation that you want to know if your gear's like that you're actually floating is good if you're doing the right thing. Rather, I mean, I guess maybe there was like a small learning process of seeing what he was doing and going. Huh?
Yeah, but I was more interested in the climbing then. I wasn't really looking at what he was doing.
Yeah, fair.
and I guess he didn't make the scenario to be a learning environment. I had a really interesting conversation with someone a couple of weeks ago, and he said that you get two types of instructors stroke guides. You get the instructors and guides that go out and they climb for themselves and they go and do stuff because that's what they want to do. And then you get the guides and instructors that go out because they actually want to teach, and they pick the right route or environment for the client to learn. And I think I think he was probably the one that wanted to climb for himself.
I think it all depends as well. Like sometimes a client just wants to be taken up a particular route. They've got a few routes in mind and they want to just go and second some routes for a day or but I think there's definitely instructors that can balance between the two and have like learning courses and days where they do that. For sure.
So I guess I learned a lot through trial and error, and I guess when I went through the instructor process, as you are or have been for some bits, like they maybe not because of your experience, because you've got quite a lot of experience, but still they rip all your bad habits to shreds and they teach you how you should do stuff, and then the learning happens from there, right? Yeah.
And then, so with those experiences, did that ever affect your confidence?
Did it? I guess initially, like not weighting the gear and not doing that kind of stuff, I wasn't conscious of not being confident. But I guess if I look back, I wasn't confident, but wasn't aware of it. So I guess I was. I can't remember. What's the term? How do they say it? Like I was unconsciously incompetent.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I didn't know any better.
Yeah, that's fair. So how long have you been climbing for now?
So I've been climbing since, I guess, properly since I was 18. So I've been climbing. I'm 44 now, so that's 26 years. And I guess I started with sport climbing and then moved into trad climbing. I dabbled a bit in bouldering, although bouldering was never really. I've never really been motivated to boulder. Because I like rope climbing, and then I ventured into what did I do first? I went and did some alpine climbing, and then being hooked on winter climbing, and then around the same time, kind of playing around with big walling. Yeah, and just like experience-wise, you learn so much in such a short amount of time. Yeah.
Do you have like a preferred discipline out of those?
So I struggle to motivate myself to go bouldering, especially outdoors, because outdoors I find that there's always trad climbing or sport climbing nearby. But I do like it. Like I remember going out to the peaks with a load of friends, and it was snowing, and I'm like, why do you want to go bouldering? It's cold. We're all going to stand around as a group and just like try and warm up to each have a go at a boulder. And you just kind of stood there for half an hour getting cold. I just can't do it. So, yeah, but I can see the benefits of bouldering. I prefer indoor bouldering.
Yeah.
And then I guess I love sport climbing because like I like to try and give it everything I've got. I like trying really hard without having to think about anything but the movement. Trad climbing, I'm fairly experienced in. I do like it, but if I had a choice between sport and trad, I'd probably lean more towards sport. And then I love winter climbing. I didn't think I ever would. I suffer from Raynaud's, so like bad blood circulation in my hands and my feet. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I love like teetering. Again, like a lot of climbers like magpies, and they love collecting stuff. And with winter climbing, you get these axes and crampons and all the shiny things that come with it. And just love that hyper focus you get in climbing when just everything else just melts away and you're just there in a moment. And I think like winter climbing adds that extra element of like involvement. Yeah, because you could be climbing and like the weather might not be so great, so you're having to deal with that too. And I love big walling too. I think I like suffering.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was like, you sound like you like suffering.
Yeah. So yeah.
I would always class like winter climbing and big walling probably as like type 2 fun.
Yeah.
Sometimes
definitely.
type 3.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's. But there's some enjoyment in suffering, right?
Yeah, I think it's like you can suffer in the moment and still enjoy like have enjoyed the experience and come down wanting more afterwards.
Yeah. It's like type 2, like afterwards you think, oh, that was a great achievement, whilst you're winter climbing, there's spin drift coming down your neck and like your face is covered in ice and something's freezing, your hands are cold, and yeah, at the time you question yourself, why am I doing this? And then afterwards you're like, oh my god, that was so cool. Let's go do it again.
Yeah, I think I have that with trad climbing, just not winter climbing.
Yeah, okay.
That experience with like big walling, like I remember the Dolomites experience with Matt and just shivering up every pitch.
Yeah.
But coming down exhilarated, knackered and exhilarated, and just wanting to go again.
Yeah.
It's addictive.
It is, yeah. I think I don't know. I sometimes think that we live such comfortable lifestyles where we have enough food to put on the table. We've got a roof over our heads. We've got a bed to sleep in. Like, we've got hot water, and we've got all these comforts. And I think stuff like big walling and stuff like winter climbing really makes you feel uncomfortable quite a lot. And when you do come back to civilization, you do appreciate the little things, like turning the knob on a tap, right, and hot water comes out, and like standing in a shower for like 15-20 minutes just to warm up.
Yeah, we definitely are in a very privileged position in that sense. And so, yes, I mean, it's the same with the ability to do the sports that we do. That comes with a lot of privilege.
Of course it does. Yeah.
So, when did you first become aware that psychology played such a big part in climbing? Like, what was the triggering point for that?
So I was on an indoor setting, climbing with, at the time, my regular climbing buddy, and I won't name his name, but he'll know.
He'll know.
Yeah, and some other people know too. So my regular climbing buddy, he's at the time a furniture restorer, and he spent all of his time at home in his workshop, all by himself. So when we came to the climbing center, he would use that as a social hub, which is all fine and cool, but not when he's belaying me. So there was a scenario where it was on an indoor setting. I was on a crux move, high up, just about to clip the last clip. I fell and I ended up 2 meters above the floor. I didn't hit the ground, and I was like, okay, that seems like that's a long way to fall. I just kind of put that down to a one-off incident, and then it happened again 2 months later with the same belayer. And the second time it happened, I was like, okay, this is not cool. Like, why has that happened? So every time that I'd climb after that, I'd always look down to see whether he was paying attention. And he was always talking to other people, and he'd have a lot of slack out. And I'd get really upset and talk to him and say, look, can you just like pay attention to what I'm doing? And it happened quite a few times. A lot of people tell me that I should have switched belayers then, but again, I didn't. And then another month or two later, like exactly the same scenario happened. Going for the crux move, high up, fell 2 meters above the floor, and that was it. Like the fear of falling, like it just crippled me. And I kind of went around his house that same week, and I told him, I said, look, it's not me, it's you. So I dumped him as a belayer, and I was like, I can't do this. So I had the decency to go around his house and tell him to his face and explain to him why. So I then climbed with other people, and like I would never go for crux moves. I would always be looking down, checking the belayer. I would always be really nervous climbing. And this went on for like quite a while, and I'm like this has got to stop. Like, what can I do to try and like get better? So I started reading some books and started doing some research and started kind of really thinking about what was really going on. And this like went on for a space of over like 2 years, trying to analyze what's going on in my head and what I can do to kind of work with it and to get better, because I love climbing, but that really affected my enjoyment of it. and then kind of working through my head and trying things and like trialing things, and over the space of 2 years start to kind of get a lot better. And then I could see that I was climbing things again that I was climbing before I had the fear of falling. And once I learned how to manage my anxieties, I started to look around and like started listening to what people were saying, and how people were moving on the wall. And I then started to see that the 99% of climbers, there's quite a lot. I'd say almost every single climber has got something that goes on in their head when they're climbing, or when they talk about themselves, or like, yeah. So I started to kind of take notice of these things, and I'm like, okay, well, around a similar time I became an instructor, and I'm like, what can I do something to like to share what I've learned? Can I do something to help these other people? And I kind of sat down and I thought, well, maybe I could like work out a syllabus of something to do with the fear of falling. See, how would I teach that? So kind of sat down and worked that all out, and then trial run a workshop with 2 instructors of the warehouse in Gloucester, like the local gym. So I ran it with them, and they loved it. So I thought, oh, maybe I can charge money for this, and people would actually pay for that. So I started running workshops, and people really enjoyed it, and it kind of helped a lot of people. And then, yeah, started to run more and more, and started to make notes after every workshop. Yeah, and then lockdown happened.
What were the strategies that helped you through?
What helped me was, I think the biggest thing was awareness of myself, and awareness of where my mind was going. And
like something, that definitely takes a high level of self-awareness to realize that it's there and it's a problem and you have to deal with it. And then it's like implementing the strategies, and it's like I guess the first step is always, there is a problem.
Yeah,
it's the same with therapy. It's like recognizing that you need counseling, or like recognizing that there's something that you need to deal with.
Yeah.
And so like that was your first step, let's say.
Yeah. I guess.
And the first point that you dealt with it was like letting go of that belay. And dumping that relationship.
Yeah.
And then so like what helped you from there? Like what were the next steps forward to like really?
Oh God, that was such a long time ago. So the next steps were, I guess it was surrounding myself with like good belayers, and I guess there was 2 people that I climbed with a lot. One's called Lee, and the other one called Josh, and I had an implicit trust in what they did and their belaying skills. And I guess for me, that was one of the biggest things, is to try and regain that trust, because like, and still now when I go climbing with people, because of what happened, I guess I would always make sure that the people belaying me, that I trust implicitly. And maybe that might not now. So I used to have to watch people and see what they do before I'd climb with them, but now I guess I've got the skills to be able to look at someone and watch how they behave, and through their behavior I can analyze whether they know what they're doing. Yeah, so I guess step 1 was surrounding myself with good people, and yeah, I guess it was trial and error, because I would climb and push myself through fear and realize that didn't work, and then I would regress. And I guess second step was to, I guess it's finding that right level of excitement where something is exciting, but I'm not shitting myself. So
the right challenge level.
Yeah, the right challenge level. So, and that had to start, and like I had to do a lot of confidence stuff, and there was a lot of stuff where I was taking falls. Although I was lead climbing, I was taking a lot of falls, like when the rope was clipped in a quick draw above me, and it was just repetition and repetition and repetition, until I felt that I could just gently take some bigger falls. Yeah.
Sounds like you had to take the control back.
Yeah.
And like make it manageable
for
you, and then move forward from there. And that's like a really sensible approach to it. Is just it's so easy sometimes to recognize, like, to not be aware that you push yourself so far past the, like, into the traumatic experience territory.
Yeah.
And that it's kind of like sometimes you think, oh, this is the way to do it. If I just get on with it.
Yeah.
And like push myself, I'll get past it. Whereas you've taken the sensible approach of being like, actually, I need to make this a manageable experience and just like deal with it step by step. This is like as far as I'm willing to comfortably go.
Yeah.
And just build it back up from there, rather than being like, I'm going to take those massive whippers again and again and again, and I'm going to be shit scared.
Yeah. And maybe like maybe that works for some people. I just know that for most people that doesn't work. Yeah, and I guess it was accepting that was going to be my future at that time, and accepting that that's where my progress was going to be, and looking at my own progress and not comparing myself to other people or thinking what I should be doing, and pushing myself beyond what I should be doing. And I see that a lot.
Do you think that's like still an ongoing process that you do now, or is it something you're like, I'm back to where I was? And
so good question. I guess before all this stuff happened, I was happy falling from any height at any point and never questioned it. I guess now I've become aware, like the falling stuff, I guess it's like keep topping it up. It's like if I don't practice it, like my comfort level with falling will drop. Although I've worked on myself for such a long time that I feel that I do have a massive bank of positive experiences. So that helps, which means that I might do, if I haven't taken any falls for a while, I might do 1 or 2 falls and go, oh yeah, I remember this is okay. But I definitely felt that, like in the past, I've had to do a lot of that. And I think, like when people come on, like when running these like fear of falling workshops or the psychology workshops that I run, is that like those workshops are a snippet and they are great information and they give you a platform to work with. But I'm like, I've had to put in like hours and hours and hours of repetition and falling to try and to see improvements.
And I think that's what like a lot of people don't realize is like how much work goes into moving past something, like making something that is a fear a bit more comfortable, and like learning from it, and like being able to constantly develop that and turn it into less of a fear. Like you've got to be a pretty rare person to have no fear whatsoever, especially as we are putting ourselves in some element of risk. And like I think it's always good to have that awareness that there is risk, and to have some sort of protection within yourself that you don't want to hurt yourself. It's also like, it's like, is it an irrational fear or a rational fear?
Well, I think I had a really interesting conversation with Allegra some time ago, and as soon as you describe a fear as irrational, you start to associate feelings with shame with it. So if you feel that something is fearful, it's a justified feeling. It's trying to analyze, well, why am I feeling that? Instead of it being like describing it as irrational, you kind of go, well, is the outcome, will that be a danger?
Yes.
Will I injure myself or hurt myself?
Yeah, and it's like, if yes, then great, you're being sensible, and if no, then it's like, okay, then why do I feel so scared about it when I know deep down I'm not going to hurt myself? But I think that, I mean, like going back to it with the experience of your belayer, like if a belayer is not paying attention, you may not think you're going to hurt yourself, but there's still always the possibility. And then it's how you mitigate those risks as well. Like, there's like freak errors sometimes, or errors that can be avoided, errors that just are totally random. And
but I think something that people forget is that when you're belaying someone, you are holding their life in your hands, and it doesn't matter whether you're on an indoor setting where people seem to be a little bit more blasé, generally speaking, than on an outdoor setting, but you are holding that person's life in your hands, and it should be treated like it, right? You should pay attention. You need to watch your climber. Do they need more slack? Do you need to take in tight? Do you think, are they about to fall off, and giving a soft catch, is it appropriate? Is it trad climbing? Is it appropriate to give a soft catch? Do you are there any obstacles in the way? And
as an instructor / coach, do you think that the development of belay devices have caused, and how belay devices work, has caused people to be more blasé?
I think people are definitely blasé, especially when it comes to like assisted braking devices. I see a lot of like, I don't know if somebody's going to take offense to this, but I think that there's people from a certain country in Europe who belay with gree-grees, and they don't hold the dead rope, and that scares me. People do become blasé. It doesn't mean that, it's like if somebody's going to belay me, they've got to hold a dead rope, right? It doesn't matter whether they're holding an assisted braking device or not. And I do think people become blasé, and I do see people using like things like gree-grees, maybe not exactly how they should be using them. Like you've got the cam, and people tend to kind of thumb the cam, and it's just to pay rope out, and you're like, well, if your mate falls off as you're doing that, they're going to hit the deck.
It's always an interesting one with feeling, because like with an old ATC, you're like, I must never let go of the dead rope, because it has no locking backup whatsoever. I think with the locking belay devices, that people just are a little bit more
blasé.
And they think nothing bad's going to happen, and the worst accidents I see are with locking belay devices.
But even like when people are like using an assisted braking device, even when they hold a dead rope, if they're not paying attention to the climber falls and either a little bit of skin gets kind of caught into the device and you immediately let go, or they get pulled up and they get slammed into the wall or the rock, and then like they like face slam into the wall, or that side of their body goes into the wall, so they're not really yeah. And like in an outdoor setting, I remember running a workshop in Kalymnos, and a falling workshop, and kind of the first intro is always I talk about best practice of belaying, what not to do, what to look out for, and I'm always saying, like, look, pay attention to the climber, watch what they're doing so that you can anticipate what goes on, because if you want to give them a dynamic catch, you've got to be able to move your body weight up as long as it's safe to do so. Make sure there are no obstacles in front of you. And just as I said that, there was an older guy stood next to us with a big rock in front, stood 3 meters back from the wall. His mate fell, and he fell over the rock, face planted. Luckily, he had a gree that caught, and he put his hands out and let go of the dead rope. And I'm like, fuck's sake.
And we're like, that's a demonstration of what not to do.
yeah, everyone laughed, but I was like, oh my God, please don't.
Yeah. I think it's just really difficult. Sometimes I see some things at the crag and I'm just like, I can't watch.
Yeah, and I feel responsible if something were to happen to help out.
Yeah. And so obviously, like, you set up Rise and Summit.
Yeah.
You've done a lot with groups, and you've done some of the psychology coaching. Do you find that people tend to want a quick, like, are they in it for the long haul? Or do they want the quick?
Good question. I think most people probably want a quick fix. I guess there are some people that want a quick fix, and I think that there's more people want a quick fix. Some people realize it's a long-term thing. And it's hard, isn't it? I can see the stuff that goes on. Like, I can't read people's minds, but I can see when stuff goes on, and I try and explain it, and people want a quick fix, and then their personality comes out, and then their personality is quite pushing towards results, and then that ends up in trouble, and people like don't progress. And it's like, for me, it took 2 years of working on it, going climbing at least twice a week, and just slowly chipping away at it and working on myself. And yeah, that's 2 years of committing to it.
Yeah, it takes, like, I think it takes time, like, whatever the experience is, like, to just get back from whatever happens.
Yeah, and I guess for me that was a trauma.
Yeah. It probably took me 2 years to feel like myself again, post climbing on Chossie sandstone and post Charlie's accident. And it wasn't like I just waved a magic wand and it magically got better. I went and did the same as you, basically.
Yeah.
Like, maybe a little bit more further along from it, because it wasn't like I was getting dropped constantly.
Yeah.
But it was still like, right, I can acknowledge I'm scared right now.
Yeah.
I'm in safe terrain.
Yeah.
I'm just going to take a controlled fall rather than push myself too far.
But was that quite hard for you to be, I guess, in that position, and to be like climbing, I guess, to be climbing professional, to climb at the level that you do?
Yeah, it felt like unusual terrain.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't something I'd ever really, like, I'd had moments of being scared, but nothing that had ever impacted me in that way for long term. And also the, like, feelings of, like, I should be climbing at a high level. There's a lot of things in the mixture, but I think going back to it is that people are willing to physically train long term.
Yeah.
They may see like some results there and then, and it'll take longer with plateaus, but do you find that with the psychology, people just aren't as invested in it as the physical side?
Yeah, it's I'd say people people want the results, and people want to be able to work on it. I think that to work on yourself physically is easier. To work on technique is easier than working on your head game, because I think working on your head game means that you also need to look at yourself as a personality. And
is it because like the psychology side of it, it's almost more qualitative rather than quantitative?
How do you mean?
In terms of like, I guess if you're physically training, and let's take pickups being the popular one with the fingers at the moment.
Yeah.
It's qualitative in that you can see progress when you're adding more weight.
Yeah.
Psychology is like, it's not really a quantifiable.
It isn't. Yeah. And people want to see progress happening, don't they? And I think it's really hard to almost regress, to start somewhere where I guess you have the right level of mental challenge for you as a person, and then work from there. And like I think it took like 2 years of dedicated working on my head game, and also realizing certain things about myself as a personality, and I guess accepting that, and learning to put my ego aside, because ego's got a big thing there, right? Yeah. So.
And was that experience, was that the whole like realization of like, I actually am interested in the climbing psychology side?
Yeah. So I guess once I'd worked through my own head game, I guess I started running these workshops, and from there developed this like love for psychology. And I guess if you look at me as a personality, I've always been, like, from quite young, quite empathetic, although my wife might disagree. I've always been fairly empathetic with people, and I'm interested in people. I love, and I think maybe that's because of my personality trait. I then ended up down that route and really enjoying trying to work out why things happen. And there's always an explanation, and I like to find out why. Yeah.
And then, so how long did it take you to write the climbing psychology book?
4 months.
4 months. But there must have been a lot of research pre that.
Yeah, well, so I've been running I called it the climbing psychology workshop. I've been running that so I guess I did 2 years worth of research and reading on my own head game stuff, and then when I was running these workshops for about six years, maybe 7 years, I was always making notes after running each workshop. And I had sometimes, I guess before lockdown, I knew I wanted to write a book on the subject, because I realized there's no book out there that is very logical. Like, there are some other books out there, and there's a book out there written by 2 doctors, and the language used is really complicated. And like, as a foreigner, like, but maybe my English is fairly basic, I think. The language these guys used was really complicated, and I'd have to read a paragraph 5, 6, 7 times to understand it, and got bored with that book. And there's another book written by Arno, and it's got some great concepts in it, but it just felt like it wasn't based on scientific evidence. And I wanted something to explain why stuff happens and make sure that it's very simple. So yeah, whenever I felt a moment of inspiration, I just write stuff down. And then I guess for me, luckily, lockdown happened, because otherwise it would have taken me a lot longer to write. And thanks to Carrie, my wife, supporting me, I would lock myself into the shed for 4 hours every morning, because that's how long I could focus for. And then my mind would just like melt. And then I just started writing. I had I came up with the chapters, I don't know, 7 years before I started writing it. I was like,
although it was like 4 months of writing,
yeah,
much more to the process.
Yeah.
Than I just wrote a smash.
Yeah, no. So I'd given it a lot of thought, and then once I'd finished the first draft, I gave it to Carrie, my wife, and gave it to a friend called Dave Talbot, and he's got ADHD, love him to bits. And he started reading it, and like within reading it with a short amount of time, he's like, "Kev, I'm bored." So I was like, "All right, Dave, why are you bored?" And he was like, "I think you're going to need some stories in it to make information relevant." And I'm like, "Cool." So yeah, started writing some stories and adding to that, and that was that. And I did approach some publishers who were like, "Who the hell's Kev? We don't know him. He's not a famous climber." So I self-published it. I was like, yeah, let's do it. I'd written it and then published it. You were one of the athletes featured in the book.
Along with many others.
Yes, along with a few others. But I like your statement the best.
that might be a bit of bias.
Yeah, but I didn't realize like self-publishing costs a lot of money. Yeah, but once I'd written the information and had somebody like design the book and stuff, I was like, I best kind of pay that, right? Pay my money to get it actually printed. Yeah, so I was in it for quite a lot, and then I didn't care how the book went. I just wanted to make my money back, and that was it. Yeah.
You achieved that goal.
I've achieved that goal. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's definitely like sometimes with these things, it's a bit of a labour of love as well as trying to also make a living out of it, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't to make a living. It was just, I guess I didn't really think past the writing the book. I guess that's my personality. It's just to go and do stuff
in the moment.
In the moment, and then think about the consequences afterwards.
Is that across all of life?
No. Is it across all of life? Oh, I think so. Yeah. I don't know. Like I guess I had an office job once, and I just handed in my notice, and I had no work lined up. So, buying our first house, I just bought it. It'd been derelict for a while. It needed some work doing to it. I didn't give it a second thought. I was like, we got to buy this. The second house we bought blinds, so we hadn't actually seen it.
That'd be a yes.
So yeah, maybe it's a personality trait.
I think though, like that's quite a good trait for personality trait for climbing is being in the moment.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, just I mean, I guess it has its pros and its cons. It depends on what context in the moment means, and like whether that's like I'm gonna go for it regardless, or it's like more of a measured in the moment.
I guess even my climbing, I guess, like if we're going to look at grades, like we all love as climbers love looking at grades, right? Just to build our ego up even more. But I guess like if I look at some of the climbing disciplines that I've done, instead of like, I guess you get a lot of people talking about you need to build up a base and then you try something a little bit harder and a little bit harder potentially. And I guess like some of the stuff that I've done is like, I'll be fine, let's go and do it. And then kind of learn on the job. I'm not saying that that's what everyone should do. I'm just saying that's my personality.
Have you ever had one of those it'll be fine moments backfire?
Yes. So yeah. So and this is probably more like winter climbing. Yeah. So I can remember of two scenarios going winter climbing where like. So I like in winter climbing you get mixed climbing and you get ice climbing, and mixed climbing is where you use your axes and crampons on like a mixture of rock and bits of ice and snow, but a lot of times just rock, snowed up rock, and then you get ice, which is quite straightforward. But in Scotland you don't get water ice, you get like aerated ice that is like styrofoam. So it's really amazing to throw your axes and crampons in, but it's awful for protection. And not having had a lot of experience, I remember climbing a route where mates climbed the first bit and he had really good ice, and I climbed the second pitch. And I was climbing and like trying to put ice screws in. I was just like pushing them in. I'm like, oh, that's not going to hold. I was like, oh, I'll just keep climbing. There's something better a bit higher up. And then another time I just push an ice screw in. I'm like, oh, it's not going to hold. And I get higher and higher, and there's a little bulge. And I'm like, okay, I'm 30 meters up. I've placed 3 ice screws. None of them are going to hold. Like if I fall here, like it's going to be a big fall and a hospital job. And I get to the bulge and I put my ice axe in, and the left one's really good, and the right one I'm just scratching around, and like the snow ice is maybe 2-3 inches thick, and I'm scratching around and nothing's like, the axe is not stopping. So like the ice was really, really bad. I'm scratching around and I can't find anything, and I'm like, I start panicking and I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna die. And I'm like, I start getting to like real panic moment. And I'm like, Kev, this is not going to work, right? Focus on your breathing, try and relax, and just see if you can find something. So focus on my breathing. I'm there for like a few minutes and try and relax. And then I just slowly scratching my ice axe in this snow, and I kind of, it stops. And I'm like, I pull on that one plane of movement, and the axe is bending without it moving, which makes me think that it stopped on something. And I'm like, okay, well, that's going to have to do. So I'm pulling really like carefully on it, and then slowly move my crampons up, and then move the right axe up to something where the ice was actually quite good, and then moved past it, and then got to the belay. And I was glad when I got there, because then it was my mate's turn to lead.
That sounds like a pretty full-on experience.
Yeah. And there's another one like it that I had last year, exactly very similar, where I climbed. Like the climbing wasn't that difficult, but it was my head like that went into panic mode, and there was an in situ piton which I clipped, and then I must have climbed I don't know, 10 meters up, looking for an ice screw, and the ice was like 2 inches thick, so not thick enough for an ice screw. And I'm climbing up again, and I'm looking for an ice screw placement, and I can't find anything. And by this time, like I'm almost doing the splits with my legs on crampons. And by this time again, I'm like 20, 30 meters above that piton, that one single rusty piton. And I'm like, oh shit, I've done it again. So I'm like, I can't down climb this. It's just too hard. So
I guess
like,
that answers my question of did you learn anything from the first?
yeah, don't climb shit ice. Yeah.
It's a good job that you do have some psychology experience to draw on.
Yeah. And do you know what? After, and this was last year, the ice was in awful conditions, and we shouldn't have gone out and climbed, but we did anyway. And when I managed to find a belay and brought the two other guys up, I was like, look, I'm done. I don't want to do any more leading today. You guys go off and lead. I just want to follow today. That's it. That's me done.
I think it's important as well to know when your brain has had enough.
Yeah.
To like go, you know what? It doesn't matter. Like again, that comes down to like a bit of the ego. I think is like, I don't need to lead anymore today, or I don't even need to lead today. Full stop.
Yeah. But I guess luckily, like you mentioned, luckily for me that I've got some training, like psychology training, and I guess I knew how to deal with that. But that was like a no fall scenario. Both of them were no fall scenarios, and I guess having the resilience to then come back and go, okay, yeah, that's I guess part of it. Let's move on.
Yeah, it's like you saying to me like, I can't, like, panicking isn't going to help.
Yeah.
You could feel that sensation kicking in, and then like having that skill set to deal with a rising panic.
Yeah.
Like, that is the worst case scenario for a no fall zone, is like that, like just going into total panic mode.
Yeah.
So like even just being able to like deal with that is such an important skill set to have.
Yeah.
And one surely that like you must like has taken time to develop as well.
Yeah. And again, that awareness, right, is, and had I not had that, like, I guess that training or being able to have that awareness of what goes on, I guess you can very quickly move into panic mode and like not really think clearly, and possibly like the consequences of something going wrong could be quite high, right? I guess, yeah, being able to calm yourself down in that moment and hyper focus on what is relevant and what isn't.
I think that's like one of the common themes that's come out through our conversations is like being the ability to have a high level of self-awareness.
Yeah,
is really important.
Yeah,
to progress in like with your head.
Yeah.
It's having that awareness to know what's happening in the moment and to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
To not ignore it.
Yeah, and putting the ego aside, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's it's a skill set. The self-awareness is, and I'm sure you have it too, right? The skill set to be able to analyze, like, psychologically and physically what goes on, what's helpful, what isn't helpful, and to sit back after a performance possibly and kind of think, well, how could I deal with that differently?
Yeah.
What have I learned from this?
And then, so having had all of those experiences, did Climb and Flow feel like, after the book, did Climb and Flow feel like the next logical step to kind of just get it out there in a more practical sense?
I guess so. I mean, I had thoughts of maybe doing something like a company that deals with just head game stuff, And I guess I'd written a book, and then coincidentally met you at the Warehouse Climbing Centre in Gloucester, where you had a lovely experience route setting. But that's a story for another time. Yeah, and I guess
to save the day.
Pardon?
You came to save the day.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. You came and stayed at ours, and then just, I guess, chatting to you. Although you frightened my kids, chatting to you, kind of, I don't know. I was like, maybe it would be an idea to set something up. And I remember you texting me like, I don't know, a month or 2 or 3 months later, going, "Oh, that's a really cool idea." I was like, "Oh, cool, somebody's on board." Yeah. And then I guess it was a case of like, right, okay, who do we find? I guess one, you've got the experience as like a competition climber and like hard trad and hard sport, and you've got that background. And I guess I'm an instructor, and I've got, I guess, my skill set from what I've done. I guess we needed somebody on board who has, I guess, a piece of paper, right? And yeah, did some research and found
a developed piece of paper.
Yeah, a well-developed piece of paper, yeah. And then came across Allegra, who's like super enthusiastic and super keen and loves climbing. And I'm like, cool, that's it. And the rest is history.
It's all areas covered.
All areas covered, yeah. And like the cool thing is, right, every time you speak to Allegra, she's like, "Oh yeah, I've got an explanation for that." And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. She's like a world of knowledge.
She is a fountain of knowledge.
Yeah.
For sure. But I think it's interesting, like we've all, like, you've got the experiences that you've had, that you've drawn upon, and then kind of gone out and done your research. In a similar, like, I'm the same, and then Allegra's got the full science background.
Yeah. And then she started climbing. So she became a psychologist first, and then started climbing, and then started to relate everything she's learned from psychology into her climbing. Whereas we've gone the other way.
Do you see like it progressing more and more people becoming interested in the psychology side and realizing that that's a key area of development as well?
Yeah, massively. I think that it takes time, doesn't it? And like climbing is such, like, there's so much in your head, and not just climbing, like so many sports, people can really do with working on their head game. Like I started watching last year, watched a documentary on Netflix on, I can't remember what it was called, the tennis players.
Yeah, I watched that as well.
Like famous tennis players, and I'm screaming at the screen going, "Oh my God, you guys need a sports psychologist." And the thing is,
some of them do.
Pardon?
Some of them probably do.
Yeah, some of them probably do. But like, there's the Australian guy that I like. He's a bit of an acquired taste. The Kiros. Yeah. Like he gets quite.
Nicky
That's it. That's a dude. I quite like him. But you can see not just him, but you can see that if you take all of these performers, and this is across like all sports, if you took away the head and you allowed that person to climb at their physical max, right, it would look very different than what it actually does, because a lot of the times the head gets involved, and you probably experience the same in maybe some of the competition climbing, where you've got yourself as well as other athletes and climbing it all at a very similar level, but the head comes into play, and then all of a sudden it just goes to pot.
Yeah, and it's just building up the skill set to deal with it.
And
realizing also that sometimes like some of the experiences that you have are more impactful than others and take time to bounce back from. Like it doesn't just like from the things that you talked about, none of it's a quick fix.
No.
When you have an experience that's traumatic, it's not a quick fix to get back to where you were or what you perceive as normal.
But what is normal, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that can be anything. For some people, it might be the experience might be that they get back to something that isn't the level that they were before, but is close to. Some people will surpass beyond it. But I think also one of the interesting things, and I don't know whether it's something you've experienced as well, is some people are just happy to go out climbing. That's all they want to do.
And I mean, that's like it's finding the motivation, isn't it? Like what are people happy to do? And people want to go out climbing, that's absolutely fine. If people want to learn more and learn more about the head game, to progress, to feel like they're progressing, then that takes time and effort.
If you had to give anyone listening to this one solid piece of advice in what would be the biggest thing to work on to progress?
Biggest thing, you can't solve a problem if you're not aware what the problem is. So I think self-awareness is, I personally think, the biggest thing that will help you understand yourself and your climbing. And once you understand that, you can choose areas that you want to develop. And that self-awareness can take place whilst you're on the wall, as long as you have the emotional capacity to think. It could be when you've asked your mates, your belayer, to take, or when you've fallen off, is to sit on the rope for a minute or two and to not talk, and just to replay the sequence of events that happen in your head, to try and think, well, what happened and why did it happen, or to come back down from a climb and to analyze why something happened. And the way that I see things happening is it's like a comic strip. I just see picture by picture, and there's a sequence that happened, and it's trying to figure out, well, what happened first and what caused me to feel that. Was that a feeling, a sensation, or a thought? Or was it something that I was already anxious before I started climbing because I knew what was coming up? It's just understanding that self-awareness of what goes on inside your head.
Amazing. Thank you for some insightful answers to those questions.
That's okay. Cool. So I hope you guys enjoyed listening, and we'll do some more podcasts. And if you guys if you've learned something or you want to contact us, check us out on the website or send us an email, and we'll be happy to help out. Or send us a topic that you want us to talk about for next time. Cool. See you later, guys.
See you later.